human race or species as a bunch of natives on this planet. Some of us have forgotten how one should behave when one is a native on this planet. Some of us have not forgotten so, but try to see the implications for the way we could live and produce if we think of ourselves as natives on this planet. Now, if you take the campaigns for a better climate, some of them seem to move us away from being natives on this planet. If you take a very basic idea in these, now I have to find out how to move this forward, like this perhaps. Okay. So this is an image of our dear planet. It's not one image, as you can make out from this. It has to be a composite of many different images taken from satellite, because there's never daylight all over the Earth at one instant. But if you look at this picture, you can see there's a lot of light coming to this planet. If you look at the next picture, you'll see that that I have troubles making the machine go forward. If you look at the next picture, I don't know why this doesn't really work. Wait. Okay. Oh, this is only a preview. Okay. Is there a... Okay. Nu skal jeg ikke have en light show. Er der en Adobe på? Slutten i Adobe i stedet for. So now we should be moving. So, dear natives, here's your planet in daylight. Here's your planet at night. You'll see there's a lot of light. You'll see that the light on this planet falls in the same places where we saw previously that the human footprint was the large one, and not in the regions where you have people starving. Now, many people say, because we have this light in the night that we can see from space, that there's a lot of street light on this planet, we seem to use a lot of resources, and we produce this climate crisis. So we should not use all this light. We should try to turn off the light and hide in the dark so that nobody will know we are here. In essence, that's the idea of the campaign of, for instance, the World Wildlife Foundation, that wanted us to switch off light for an hour all over the planet during a particular day, and we could all sit in our kitchen trying to explain to the kids why it would be a progressive thing to turn off the light and look as if you're not home. So the idea of turning off the light is sort of the idea of saying, we are not natives here, we shouldn't be here at all, we should be ashamed of ourselves and hide in the dark. And of course this is a silly idea, because to turn the light off is not necessary if you start doing the right thing, which is to catch the sunlight when it's there in the daytime, and then let it go loose again in the night when you need some extra light. And so basically, there's no need for us to hide. There's a need for us to be more smart and to do another kind of energy production than we do at the present. If you look at this graph here, you can see the amount of solar energy that hits our planet all the time. You can see the amount of wind energy that generates, the amount of hydro energy, water flowing down it generates, and then you can compare this huge cube to the small cube here, which is the total global consumption of energy by the entire human species. So as you can see, it shouldn't really be a problem to take this small cube out of the big cube. There's lots of energy. It's only a question of catching it and using it when you want it. And the only reason we have to use oil and coal and uranium is because our engineers and our business people have not been smart enough. They haven't been challenged by people like us to make better solutions. Now we are challenging them. Now we are telling them, if you want to be a famous engineer and get the engineering prizes, please find this small cube and this big cube. And we tell the business people, if you want to make money and become rich, which is okay with me, then find this small cube and this big cube. It's a very simple transition, but it has very deep implications for the way we live our lives, which is what I'll try to explain. With the concept of green light, that we want the light we use to lighten up our lives to be green, to be ecological, to come from renewable sources. But the term green light, which is the title of a book I published in Danish called Grønt Lys, which means green light. The green light is not only ecological light, it's also a green light in the traffic signal sense of, yes, let's go ahead, let's produce technologies that can grasp and get and catch the sunlight when it's there and let it loose again when we need it. So green light is about that we shouldn't be too ashamed of ourselves. We should be proud of ourselves and go into a life where we are part of this planet. Another phrase used for this is the phrase bright green. That is the green movements, the environmental movements, which are not against technology development, but are for technology development, because we need very much a new technology that's smarter than the one that the business people and the engineers have given us up till now. Two major movements or two major icons of this movement that I could mention here is worldchanging.org, which is an American movement and website which is very rich in many different aspects of this problem, originally started by the science fiction writer Bruce Sterling. Another important movement that you've already heard about and we'll hear more about today is Cradle to Cradle movement, started by the German chemist Michael Braungart and the American architect Bill McDonough. The idea of it being that all products should sort of be designed so that they can be used again, either in the biological or in the technological cycle on this planet. Now, to explain all these principles, I would like to use my little pet animal here. It's an ecosphere. You'll see it's a bowl of glass inside which you have some water. You have a coral, which is not very important. But the important and the interesting thing about this bowl here is that you can see there are small organisms living. Actually, there are 3 shrimps, very small shrimps in Danish rejer, that lives inside this little bowl and go on living for years. I have one at home, and they go on for years swimming around, and we find them very interesting. There are 2 other kinds of organisms, 2 other species present in here. There's some algae, and there are some bacteria. And the interesting thing is that this is a closed system. No matter comes from the outside into it or from inside to the outside world. It's a closed system, and yet the shrimps will happily swim around for years and years and years, and the algae and the bacteria will live also for years. The only thing entering the system is the daylight coming from the outside. And if you are a little nerdish and you try to understand this system, you can actually buy them in shops as ecospheres. They were originally developed as studies of how space stations could function. But if you become a little nerdish, and I'm afraid this is in Danish, you can see what's happening inside. You have the shrimps that swim around. They produce waste that the bacteria will break down. This waste will then become nourishment for the algae that will catch the sunlight and produce food and oxygen from this process of using sunlight in photosynthesis. The food will be the food of the shrimps, and the oxygen will also be used by the shrimps so they can inhale the oxygen and burn the food. They exhale CO2, carbon dioxide, which is used by the algae to grow. This is a very simple closed system where one organism's waste is the other organism's food. This has been studied in ecology for many, many decades, And of course it's a very important system, and it's a model of a much bigger system, which is the system of the whole planet Earth, which runs exactly the same way. We have animals like ourselves, like the shrimps. They produce waste that bacteria will break down into nourishment for plants. Plants will take the sunlight, produce food and oxygen that the animals will eat and inhale, producing CO2. And all of us do this, and we do it in a very simple way where the waste of one organism is the food of another organism. Here's from a book called The User Illusion. It was published in Danish as Mærkverden. You'll see here this process where essentially this whole thing is converting sunlight into movement, because via the plants and the animals, the sunlight is converted into the movement of the animals. Now, this is a very simple system, and the interesting thing, of course, is that waste equals food, as Braungart and McDonough are quoting old ecologists for saying. The waste of one organism is the food of another organism. And you might say, I don't want to eat shit. I don't want to eat the waste of other organisms. I don't want to inhale the waste of other organisms. And you can have that point of view, and you can keep it up for about a minute or two, and then you will be in trouble. Because if you don't want to inhale the waste products of other organisms, you're not allowed to breathe in oxygen, which is basically the waste of plants. So, and if you don't take in oxygen, you'll be dead in a few minutes. If you want to step off this waste equals food cycle, you will be dead in a few minutes. So what you have to do is you have to share your shit with other organisms so that they can eat your shit and you can eat their shit. That's the only way you can make this whole system run on basically on the solar energy coming from the outside. It's a very simple rule of life, and if you don't obey it, you're dead. And the funny thing is that the human civilization has not been obeying this rule of life for some 100 years, and therefore we are in deep trouble, or as you might say, in deep shit.